What's up, everybody? Evan here for grips.com, continuing with Project Get Me Stacking. Now I want to try an experiment today. I want to do something different, okay? So I'm going to deal you two cards, and we're going to peel them together, okay? Ready? So I want you to tell me, or tell yourself, how you feel, okay? What do we got there? Oh, wow. It's an ace. Oh my god. It's an ace and a king. Now the question is, when you see that, when you see this ace and this king, do you get a feeling of excitement, like you're going to win a lot of money, like you're about to win a big pot? Or do you get a feeling of like fear, like, oh shit, not this one again. What the hell am I going to do with this? I always make a mistake with this one. Fucking ace king. I never know what to do. So, if you haven't figured it out, the question of the day relates to that troublesome hand, ace king. And I can understand why people hate it, but hopefully by the end of this presentation, you're going to learn to love ace king. You know, you're just going to take it and you just want to just like wrap your arms around it. You know, it's a sweet hand. He's king. Okay, let's get right into the question. Hey Evan, I want to find out your and other players' opinions on what to do with ace-king facing heavy action pre-flop. For example, if you're facing a 4-bet shove from an opponent or a raise and a re-raise in front of you. In my experience, when a player faces this kind of action, he is almost never ahead, as players very rarely show up with ace-queen or worse when they 4-bet or 5-bet. In live poker, this is especially true. Online poker, not necessarily the same. In my experience, players often show up with hands like jacks and queens, and sometimes the horror hands of kings and aces. Is it not correct to then be folding ace-king in these spots more often pre-flop, or am I just being a nit? Thanks, Donna. And this is a great question, and ace-king is a tough hand. And I do apologize. I'm not really just going to talk about how to deal with 4 and 5 bets pre-flop, because it's really specific to the table and the situation, but I am probably going to give you a lot more than you bargained for, and I hope you're ready for it. So without further ado, let's just get right into that presentation and talk about how to play ace-king. Yes. Okay, so ace-king is a really mysterious hand. The amount of posts written about it could fill a university textbook, and it is probably the most difficult hand for beginners and intermediates alike to play, just slightly ahead, of course, of pocket jacks. It's known as the Anna Kournikova of poker because it looks good but it never wins. Big Slick, walking back to Houston, whatever you want to call it. Everyone can remember at least one big pot they've played with ace-king. In fact, what you probably remember most about it is that whenever you re-raise with it, the flop never seems to bring a pair. And when it does, the other player tends to somehow just hit a set. Okay, the truth is, ace-king is a pretty sweet hand. Her problem lies in that often, if overvalued or played incorrectly, you will mostly be playing big pots when you're losing and small pots when you're winning. But this doesn't have to be the case. The key with this hand is to not go too crazy when you make a pair, because otherwise you may find yourself walking back to Houston. The key is to know the appropriate amount of action to give and how to play it pre-flop to set yourself up for a profitable parlay. Ace-king is a hand that can get you a ton of value if played correctly, and in many games, it should be one of your most profitable hands. This is especially true in tournaments. So all-in pre-flop is the easy way to play the hand, and in games that aren't super deep stacked, especially in ones that contain wild opponents, it's often the best way to play the hand. You have to consider some things though. It's not okay to just throw on the blindfold and when you get dealt ace-king and shovel your chips in the middle. Okay, so what do we need to think about? Well, the first thing is that your opponents matter. Is your opponent or opponents in the hand, are they loose players? Are they tight players? What are their criteria for raising, re-raising, and re-raising pre-flop? This is very important because if they're tight, you don't want to get all in pre-flop. But if they're loose and they're willing to call an all in with like King 7 suited or 7-5 suited, which in some games you'll see, You want to be ramming and jamming. The next thing is that positions matter. Generally, at least for players who are positionally aware, they're going to be opening fewer hands in early position than they will in late position. So if the action is under the gun raises, under the gun 1 re-raises, and under the gun 2 re-raises, well, that's probably a spot where ace king is going to find its way into the muck. But if the action is, the button raises and the small blind 3-bets and you're in the big blind with ace king, well, that's a very different situation where ace king is much more likely to be the best hand. Okay? Next, we're going to say that action ahead matters, but it matters less so than 1 and 2 because points 1 and 2 are going to tell you a lot more about what that action means. Just because it's gone raise, re-raise, and re-raise doesn't necessarily mean that ace king is not the best hand in play. It probably means so, but not necessarily. And that's one thing about the question that talked about heavy action preflop. Well, it's not just heavy action preflop, it's who's dictating the heavy action preflop and where is the action coming from that really, really matters. The action ahead is a third consideration after you look at points 1 and 2. Because some people's requirements for opening or re-raising are much different than others, and you have to pay attention to this. Some people will put in the third bet with hands like 7-8 suited, while others will only put in the third bet with jacks or better. The same goes for the fourth bet. You have to know your opponent to know whether or not your ace-king will be a big favorite against their range for getting all in. Stack depth, as a fourth, is an important consideration. The fewer blinds you are getting in for an all-in pot, the less significant your mistake is if you run into aces or kings. It's much easier to win back 40 big blinds than it is to win 500, and in general, if you have 500 big blinds in front of you, you should almost never be getting it all in preflop with ace-king. But in general, if you have 40 big blinds or less, unless there are like 4 or 5 raises ahead of you, or the final raiser in the pot hasn't played a hand in 6 hours and has hair whiter than the Arctic Circle, you're probably going to be fine getting it all in with ace-king. Also, don't forget, even though your opponent has 3-bet, 4-bet, who knows, maybe even 5-bet, if the stacks are deep enough, there is still a chance that they may be planning on folding their hand to further action. Against these types of players, ace-king is an absolute monster. It makes for a dream situation because the fact that you hold an ace and a king decreases the chances of them holding aces or kings by 50%. And against an opponent who will 4-bet with jacks or queens to quote-unquote find out where he's at, a hand that has over 55% chance of winning against your ace-king but won't call an all-in shove, think about how powerful this hand for this play really is. Some people will even fold kings to the right action, and like ace-king is, you're 70% dog there. And some people will fold to it. So think about it. When it comes to tournaments, there isn't much that can get me more excited than finding an ace and king in the hole. In tournaments, player standards for opening pots are much looser than they are in most cash games due to the antes, and since people know this, their standards for re-raising are also lighter. This makes for a dynamic where people are very unlikely to give anyone credit for having a hand, and it's fairly common to see people calling all-ins with hands like ace-jack, king-queen, ace-10 suited, pairs, and ace-queen, of course. Against this range, I'll take ace-king all day. I'm 50-50 against the pairs, and I'm like 75-25 against the dominated hands. And if you ever wonder why ace-queen is the #1 bust-out hand on the World Poker Tour, it has a lot to do with the fact that ace-king is the #1 slayer in tournament poker. You're probably thinking it should be aces, and I'm probably going to get some heat about this, but whatever. And in the early stages, this is more true, because people are, only getting in with like queens plus, so aces really crushes. But the fact is, late in a tournament, people can't afford to wait for big pairs, and ace-king comes around twice as frequently as those big pairs do. Now, when it comes to cash games, especially deep stacked, getting all in against anyone other than the village drunk is usually going to land you in some trouble, especially like 10-handed for a lot of chips. Don't feel like you have to automatically re-raise pots when you have ace-king. if someone else has already brought the pot in for a raise, sometimes flatting with ace-king is the best play. And a cool thing about flatting with ace-king is it prevents you from getting 4-bet off your hand if your opponent only 4-bets with strong hands, or just it helps you avoid a tough spot potentially, where if you re-raise and then get re-raised, you're like, what do I do with my ace-king now? It would have been really nice to just see a flop. So here are some instances when flat calling is a good option. The first is when you're looking for disguise. When you think your opponent will read hands well, or put you on ace-king, because that's what everyone does when faced with a re-raise, right? In live poker, it seems to be the case anyway. This is a good time when you want to flat. Maybe you want to re-raise with hands that aren't ace-king because your opponents are going to put you on ace-king anyway. And when you flat, you want to have ace-king. Building on that, against a tough opponent, you want to quote-unquote strengthen your flatting range by letting it contain ace-king. If you always re-raise with ace-king in your big pairs, your opponent will know that when you just call his raise, your possible holdings can't contain these strong hands, and he can discount them from their range and play much more aggressively, knowing that you're going to have to smash a board to be able to really withstand a lot of heat. You just don't have enough slow plays to be dangerous in that spot. The deeper you get, the more dangerous top pair, top kicker hands become. You don't really want to be playing for stacks with one pair as your stack gets into the 200 to 300 big blind range, which is why at this point, flat calling opens with ace-kings should become more and more of a consideration. Next, if you think your opponents will fold all hands that you have in bad shape, stuff like ace-queen, ace-jack, ace-10, king-queen, king-jack, maybe even like king-9 suited, who knows how wide they open. If you think they're going to fold all those hands if you re-raise, then you're missing out on a lot of potential value by re-raising with ace-king. Whether they start with a wide range of hands or a narrow range of hands doesn't matter so much. Think about it. If you like to play against their range as is, their opening range, just call. That way they still have all the hands that they have when they open. If, on the other hand, you want to narrow their range to fewer holdings, you want to re-raise. That way they fold out some hands that they've opened with, and they call with the hands they're comfortable playing versus a re-raise. So you are narrowing their range to a more specific holding. If you want to make someone easier to read, or if you think someone opens way too loose and you want to pin them a bit more, this is a time when re-raising is good. But ultimately, all these points come down to one thing, that you think you can get more value out of your opponent by just calling. That's the time when you want to just call, and you guarantee that you can't get all in pre-flop if you don't re-raise. Remember, ace-king, it's the best high card hand. Just because you missed the flop doesn't mean you have to fold to a single bet. You'll often be ahead of a lot of the hands that people c-bet. And people love to two-barrel on aces and kings when they come on the turn or on the river, which makes ace-king a fantastic hand for floating, quite possibly the best hand of all time for floating. I would nominate it number one. Ultimately, you have to know your opponent, and you have to be in tune with the action to know what the best play with ace-king is and what it's going to be. The main point I want to get across is that, like my shirt, in this rock, paper, scissors game, you have options, and one is always going to be a little bit better than the other one, so it's up to you to figure out which is the best one based on the considerations I just mentioned. Finally, I may get some heat for this, but I really don't care, because I know from experience that what I'm about to say is true. It is okay to fold ace-king pre-flop. That's right, it is okay to fold ace-king pre-flop. Just because you fold ace-king pre-flop does not mean you're being a nit as long as the situation dictates it. Don't get in the habit of doing it every single time you get dealt it. It's a hand you should be excited about, not afraid of. If you know the range of your opponents is super strong, given all the info above, what's the point of getting involved with ace-king pre-flop? Let's say if the range is kings and aces only, what's the point of calling that re-raise? To flop a pair so that you can get yourself stacked? Where's the fun in that? As I've said before, just because you got dealt a nice hand doesn't mean you have to play it. Yes, the majority of the time, ace-king is a hand that should be played. It's a hand that you should be playing and getting involved with, especially when suited. But there are times where it should be mucked, and that's not just because you didn't hit the flop. It's a lot to talk about. I mean, I'm happy to talk a lot about Ace King because I know it's like such a dreaded hand, and it should not have that like connotation with you guys. You should be really excited about it. So I hope that clears up the debate on Ace King a little bit, and I hope to see some debating going down in the comments. I'm sure you guys have a lot of stuff to say. Big thing, guys and girls, really big thing. Try to remember all the medium and small pots that you've played with Ace King, not just the all-in pots. This will give you a more realistic assessment about Ace King rather than just focusing on the big pots, because if you focus on the big pots where you just had one pair and you were playing deep stack cash games, yeah, you probably lost with it, and that's probably why you hate it. But maybe you could have played the hand differently, or maybe you should have put in a couple bets but not called that big raise on the turn and then that all-in bet on the river. Maybe you missed the information in front of you. Just a possibility. The main thing is, remember, every pot matters, every decision matters, every spot matters, no matter how small, okay? Now don't you forget it. So if you have any questions for the Get Me Stackin' project, please send them all on over to evan@grips.com with the subject line Get Me Stackin'. Hopefully I can answer your question and help you get stacking. Next, please leave your comments below in the video. I love to hear your guys' thoughts, and I love to see the discussion that goes on. They get better and better every day, so I'm going to keep encouraging you guys to leave comments because you keep making these videos that much more awesome. Finally, if you're finding the Get Me Stackin' series helpful or any of the other videos I'm producing, please show your support by subscribing to the channel below, and you'll be notified anytime a new video is released. That's going to do it for me. I hope you found the video insightful and informative. This has been Evan for Grips.com, saying peace.